Joining me now is Assistant Multicultural Affairs Minister Julian Hill. Julian, thank you so much for being with me this evening. I must say I was pleasantly surprised to see some of your comments at the McKell Institute this week. Some, of course, I disagreed with, but reading parts of it, I thought, heck, I could be reading a speech here from Angus Taylor. I mean, you're talking about the fact that the Labor Party has to acknowledge that people have legitimate concerns about the rate of migration, that people want to celebrate Australia Day, that they shouldn't be talked down to, that they shouldn't be sneered at. Do you think this is as much a threat, the rise of One Nation, is as much a threat to some degree to the left as it is to the coalition?
Oh, well, thanks for having me on and thanks for your interest in the speech. It is a serious speech, it's thoughtful. Fundamentally, it's about how we live well together as Australians, how we get on with each other, how we get to know our neighbours, how we protect what we've built here over generations, and at times how we disagree agreeably. I think, you know, with the rise of extremism, social media algorithms, spillover politics from other parts of the world and so on, I think we've lost that ability at times to disagree agreeably. Instead of going, oh, well, that's not my cup of tea, mate, or that's a view I don't agree with, the cancel culture, which I've long called out, people end up screaming and shouting at each other. These are ideas that I've been thinking about long before the current jump in the polls with respect to One Nation. And look, I do call out Pauline Hanson. She's had 30 years of this. And I say to your listeners and anyone in the community, I have these conversations regularly, in criticising One Nation or Pauline Hanson as the politics of grievance, as anger with no solutions, that's in no way criticising, you know, people who have legitimate concerns about these issues. We should be able to talk about those things without screaming and shouting or demonising large groups of Australian society, many of whom have different coloured skin or a different faith, but have been here for generations and share our commitment to democracy, the law and Australian values.
But see, this has become the problem, hasn't it? People talk about Pauline Hanson and often jump to say, oh, racist or something, right? And people who are looking to vote One Nation, which, you know, depending on which poll you look at the moment, is somewhere between 24 and 30% of voters in this country, they take that as a personal attack. And what you have said in this speech is that we have to recognise that these people are fundamentally decent people who have issues with the way that the country is being run. And I think every time people jump to say racist or some other derogatory term, I always think of Hillary Clinton and the basket of deplorables, for instance. It actually does the opposite of what you may be seeking to do, which is have the discussion. You can't convince people of your argument by demonising them. You have to acknowledge that they have real concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the Prime Minister's been really consistent on this. He said this some months ago with the marches for Australia. I call them marches against Australia in many respects. But the Prime Minister's been clear. You don't demonise most people who go to those things and have a disagreement. I mean, you can disagree firmly with the idea of Nazis marching the streets of Australia in 2025 and a lot of the people behind such events, but you don't disagree with people's legitimate concerns. I'll just make a couple of points on what you've said. With respect to the question of race, it is an objective fact, okay? Let's not call individuals racist, but it's an objective fact that Pauline Hanson has a political business model of using issues of race. It has done for 30 years this year. It was 1996, she said the country was going to be swamped by Asians. And now she's been on about Muslims. She's had a go at First Nations Australians, she's had a go at African Australians, many of whom come on skilled migrant pathways with PhDs and stuff. You know, every group has had a turn at different times. So it is a political business model. One of the points I make in the speech, and, you know, Australians fundamentally are not racist. They're decent people. They're prepared to give their neighbour, their work colleague a go. But one of the points I make in the speech is we just need to lower the temperature and think deeply, where does this kind of politics of division and grievance and hate and at times violence, where does it lead a country? Because you only need to turn on the TV, don't change the channel right now, stay on Caleb's show, but you only need to turn on the TV and see parts of the Americas, parts of Europe and the democratic world that are fracturing, or look through history or other continents when so-called leaders choose to try and weaponise issues of human difference and diversity, that can lead to very dark and dangerous places for our country.
But can I ask you, Julian, I'm sorry,
right.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but can I ask you, how does that sit, characterising some of these policies as fitting into, say, the hate category? How does that sit with the idea that many of the people who want to vote for One Nation are decent people who have genuine concerns? Are you trying to walk both sides of the fence to some degree?
No, and it's a really good question. I'm really, really pleased to have this conversation, mate. And so I've tried to deal with the issue of race and say, objectively, there is a business model of stoking that. I don't think, though, frankly, that a lot of people that have parked their vote, opinion polls between elections are an expression of feeling and opinion and often frustration at a point in time, because people can express a view without consequence, without actually having a bunch of people running the country who objectively have no demonstrated experience. I mean, you've got 3 or 4 people from One Nation in the parliament right now. So I get that. And some of this is driven by the collapse of the coalition in recent months, where former coalition voters have said in exasperation, what on earth is going on here? It's a clown show, it's a circus. I mean, if you guys don't get your act together, maybe I'll go there. So, that's fine. Just on the issue of migration, because it is one of the biggest concerns for people who are saying right now, look, I think I might vote One Nation, right? Couple of facts. Net overseas migration has been too high. But I just want to draw a line, OK? Before COVID, it bounced around like this. Then, when the borders closed, it plummeted to negative for the first time since World War II.
Sure.
Not rocket science, of course it did. And then when the borders reopened, it spiked, because Australians came back from overseas who were stuck offshore. They count as a net overseas migrant. International students, working holiday makers who do the work in regional areas, skilled migrants, and the partner visa holders, loved ones of Australians, husbands and wives. So all those people came back and there was a spike. As well, we had the lowest average unemployment for 50 years, so lots of people who you'd normally think would leave the country didn't leave. So that led to a spike for a couple of years, and now it's fallen. So I want to get that fact through. Net overseas migration was too high, but it's now fallen by over 45% because more people are leaving the country and we've been tougher on arrivals, and that's stabilised.
And
we've got to make sure that people are getting facts.
Yeah. And
of course it did.
I'm so sorry, Julian. I wish we had so much more time because it is a fascinating discussion. I'll have more to say about all of this in the next segment of the program. But I wanted to talk about as well the fact you talked about how important integration is in Australia Day and various other things. But we are pressed for time here, Julian. So I want to say thank you so much for joining me tonight, and maybe we'll pick the conversation up another day.
Very happy to. Thanks, Caleb.
Thanks.